Good afternoon. I was not prepared. I thought it's still 7, 8 minutes were left, but nonetheless, we'll start this panel. So we have three eminent next generation entrepreneurs, Prakhar, Rujul, and Sumit. So who does this story? I think if I remember, Mr. Sumit is the person who does this story. We'll start with you. Tell us your story.
Hello. Yeah. So I'm building a startup called Ekank Technologies, which is all around culture and heritage.
Right.
And culture as a market is extremely fragmented. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to unify the market using storytelling as the core.
Yeah.
So considering that the topic of today is India across the globe, there's this fascinating story around the origins of Pav Bhaji. So effectively, Pav Bhaji is a street food in Mumbai, but the origins of Pav Bhaji actually lie with the American Civil War. So in 1861, when the Civil War happened in US, so cotton export in India actually increased multiple folds because there was a lot of blockading that happened there. Now, when the cotton mills started round the clock, the owners of the mills, they actually had to have some kind of a cheap food. Sasta khana chahiye. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. It's better.
So they wanted cheap food for all the people who are working in the mills. So what they did was, jo bhaji hota hai, bhaji is effectively leftover vegetables from last night. Just to bhaji bana dete hain. And pav is a Portuguese bread. So that's how Pav Bhaji came into play. So even the origins of Pav Bhaji have global roots in them. Just wanted to start out with that one story. And these are the kind of stories that we tell on the platform because food shapes culture of a particular place, religion shapes culture, stories and history shape culture. And our aim is to tell all of these stories and give opportunity to people and to students and to storytellers to make a living out of it.
But so there are two things. There are already few larger players in this area. Your story, I think, is a very important platform, which is already 5 years ahead than you. So we'll come back to initial introduction is very good. Rujul, if I have pronounced the name correctly. So how did you decide to do your own thing, and what was it the journey like coming back from abroad, studying there, and how will you distinguish in this crowded market? What is the thinking on that line?
Sure, and it's great to be here. Hi, everyone. So yeah, like you mentioned, I studied at UCLA and was in the US for about 5 years, and then decided to move back because I had a problem in mind specifically related to increasing financial education and awareness among women in India and in other emerging markets as well that I wanted to experiment more about. And so currently we're building Basis. So I'm the head of product and the team at Basis is building a global VC-backed fintech startup where we're essentially curating financial services across education, credit, loans, and insurance as well that are curated for the needs and the hopes of women. Today, we see a huge gap in the market for services that are very generic. Women are more looked at marketing as a marketing problem versus products that can be actually curated for them. And so we're looking at the deeper needs of what women want today, right from trust and awareness, and then building for that. So currently the market here is very, very nascent when we're looking at this specific problem. But we are seeing startups coming up that are, as this problem is gaining awareness, we're seeing startups that are coming up and across other emerging markets as well. So we have startups that are solving a very similar problem in Singapore, in the UK, because this problem is very global. And I think it's women have just started working. And so it's a very nascent problem that we're trying to solve.
Wow. Prakhar Warikoo today said, if you follow his tweets, he said, India is at this stage where a lot of money has to be made. He made that statement today morning. And you are into money, all kind of financial things you are doing. Two things are important. Rujul touched upon the international part of it, and we'll go there. But what is your product and how you are going to differentiate it in this crowded money market?
First of all, thank you and good evening to everyone. probably I'll start off how this piece came in, and it revolves around how disruption is also taking place. Most of us, like Rujul, either have the dream of going abroad, studying abroad, living abroad, and then thinking as if that's the life. But eventually, when we turn out as loners in that field, we understand that maybe we need to come back. Funny story. There was an India-Singapore summit. I was working in Singapore. Modi had come in. Mr. Modi, he was doing a volunteer event for us, and he was meeting all volunteers. And he came to me amongst possibly 200 volunteers. I was the only Indian, and he said only one thing for 5 seconds. He said, "Tum ho hamara brain drain." And he walked off. "Tum ho hamara brain drain," and he walked off. That stayed with me for like 30 days. In 45 days, I was back to India. There was this idea came in there where I saw the markets there are so developed, and they are the ones who are targeting our markets eventually. And our disruption, which is happening, we are eventually catering to an audience where the unit economics don't make sense because the transactional volumes are so low. The transactional volumes, if you go abroad with our product, they say we don't want to look at it because we deal in possibly 7 digits, 8 digits. We have possibly 5 digits, 6 digits in terms of our transactions. So the concept came in where I saw that there needs to be an aggregator platform in the finance industry as well. Eventually, you have aggregator platforms in
B2B, you mean?
Yeah, correct. So you have in D2C, you have a Zomato, you have a Swiggy, you have aggregator platforms across, but you don't have it for independent financial advisors, for independent DSAs, who are the backbone of the economy right now. Because if you look at stock markets, which everyone does, 45% of them are banking and finance, out of which you'll see the backbone are either the distributors or the DSAs or DSTs. So eventually I thought that's where it takes us to. It started out from there, being an aggregator platform, then went at that how we can keep it asset light. We made sure that each and every, I'll say advisor or slash loan aggregator, he feels as if he's independent in nature, because India is called a mixed economy, a private and public. But frankly speaking, we are right now a gig economy. Everyone is doing a side hustle. Everyone is also doing their own job, and everyone wants to become an entrepreneur also.
So moonlighting, mix of it, gig economy, moonlighting,
Yeah.
you're doing many kind of stuff together. So we'll open up now. Sumit, the story is a very captivating thing. All the digital platforms, they are basically story platforms. And for me personally, I do a lot of LinkedIn, and I have 90,000 people who follow me. As a lawyer, it was very important for me because we had no place to go and tell our stories. So now we are telling our stories. This is a very crowded medium in my understanding. I don't know the name of Shraddha's Sharma, maybe who does your story. Is still there when you see the new thing come up. Ranveer Elabadia has a platform. There are many who are coming, and they all are just telling a story, and they all are good stories. Do you think that in a crowded market like this, you will have your own niche, and then you will eventually take it abroad? So what is your mantra for that?
So when you talk about your story or Ranveer Alabadia and a couple of other people, they're not platforms. They're publishing. So they have a team of people who are telling those stories. So what we are doing is we're building a platform for everybody to tell a story.
Correct.
So, and we are only culture and heritage oriented. So we already have a niche that we are catering to. We are catering to culture and heritage, and we are enabling everybody to tell a story, the story that they have. Because if you look at culture, it's in India, it's actually orally passed across generations. It's not something that's been written throughout. If you look at, so there's a village near Mumbai called Varli. There's Varli art form, which is extremely famous. Ab wahan pe, there's a very old lady who used to live there. That lady had the entire knowledge of the art form kaise karna. Now, people from different NIFT colleges and different colleges, they used to go there to learn that particular art form as an activity, as a graduation project, could be something else. But then, how do you tell that story? If we were to become a media house, or let's say a publishing platform, then it would become very difficult for us to carve a niche out of it.
So how do they write then?
We give the opportunity to everybody to write.
So whatever way they want to write.
Exactly.
Wow.
And then we have a very cross media format community of storytellers. So there are visual storytellers, there are voiceover artists. So for example, I could be a person who doesn't know how to write, as in I cannot write well, but I could draw extremely well.
Correct.
So there is a story that you have written which is very fascinating, but there is an audience which doesn't like to read. They would rather look at a comic.
Right.
So I can come in, I can take your story, create a comic out of it, and then publish it on the same platform. So your story becomes actually accessible to millions more.
Right.
There could be somebody who's a voiceover artist. That person could probably not write or could draw, but kahani shandar sunate honge.
And it is not language is not able.
So language is not the barrier that we have right now. So we are doing it in Hindi and English, but the aim is to go across languages so that a story from, let's say, a remote village in Assam, which is probably written in Ahomis or Bengali, could reach somebody who's in Punjab.
Wow.
Or a story which is there from Tamil Nadu could reach somebody who's from Gujarat.
Right.
Across media formats, across that. And we are boosting the overall creator economy there.
Yeah.
And this happened actually, I think 2 days back, wherein between last September and this September, 100 million unique users have come to the platform that we've built and read stories.
Yeah.
In less than 12 months.
And that's a very big number you're talking about. So Rujul, will come to you, dissect further your entire business, how it relates to a common person sitting here, and how do you think that this will become more and more mainstream, what you're talking about?
Yeah, so currently we're targeting mostly urban women between the ages of 21 to 40 who have some sort of a disposable income and want to take more control of their finances, right? So I think the biggest challenge for us right now is to push women to talk about it. I think there's a sense of intimidation there that we're also trying to solve for. And your question around the crowdedness of the market, right? So we don't think that it's necessarily a zero-sum game here because one of our major challenges is awareness. So if we get more people to talk about it, that means more customers for us as well. And that's what we see globally as well. So the startup that we're building definitely is relatable to any woman who is between the ages of 21 to 40 or even in the 50s as well, who is earning some sort of an income and wants to take more control of her finances. And I think that we've also seen men in their lives take that stand as well, where they are also pushing women to take more control of it. And so we look at both sides of the things when we're definitely marketing for our product.
So is it also coming from the fact that, I don't know about your generation, but in my generation, at least, it was very common that I've seen my mother always having the control over the finances in the house also. Like my father will take 50 rupees from her every morning before going to office. So it comes natural to them. So it's not something like if they want to do it, they can very well do it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, women control the budget of the house, right? So, but I think that specifically in our generation, what the difference is that there's more agency because women are now earning their own money.
Yeah.
So they do have that decision-making power where they don't have to ask anyone what to do with it, or they don't have to ask for permission. So I think that's where that education aspect also comes in.
Right. And Prakhar, I'll ask you, Moolaah is a very good name. I first thing which I thought about it, what a brilliant name, because that solves a lot of problems. Will you be confining yourself to the financial market, or this is not the end? There's something else playing in your mind.
Yeah. So
it came to me. That's why I'm.
Yeah. You, like you rightly said, Moolaah means money. So eventually, everything revolves around money for most of us. But it comes from the fact that there is enough information awareness, like Rujul mentioned.
Yeah.
There's enough information awareness right now in the consumer's mind. But information awareness doesn't mean you have knowledge.
Yeah.
So the knowledge that someone procures, you can't ever discount that. And that's what we want to make sure that is present over here. It starts with probably wealth, moves on to probably loan syndication also, then moves on to other asset classes. We are on the verge of incubating metaverse within this platform itself, so that if you're actually speaking about a phygital dialogue between a consumer and an advisor that eventually needs to foray into a format where there is genuine awareness with a physical interaction too, but you can't have physical interaction. Someone who's sitting in Sikkim can't be advised by someone who's sitting right now in Delhi. So eventually, how do you make that into play? But of course, like everyone, you can't just force your pieces inside the puzzle. Definitely, we will continue to be in the same space of money, because I think amongst the 107 unicorns, we had 22 of them in fintech. Like we're talking about global disruption, around 62% of them are have already ventured abroad.
Right.
Though despite our country regarding disruption has always been related towards enterprise SaaS. So someone like a Zoho or a Freshworks or a ChargeBee is someone which is known outside. And we followed a similar philosophy like Israel, where they have something in enterprise SaaS and cybersecurity in terms of what global disruption they are doing. But eventually it's the same piece here that we need to move forward where the majority of our pieces are underlying. So
Absolutely.
we are going to continue continue in the same space as of now for the next 2 to 3 years. But moving on, we are focusing towards asset management also.
Yeah. Sumit, one interesting development, I was talking to somebody yesterday who had a major role in pushing on drone from absolutely being under control by the Civil Aviation Ministry 7 years back, that it was almost like you own a car and you can't start a car unless you get all the specific permissions. So from there to today, where at least 100 companies are into manufacturing and maintenance of drone. So there was a group of people who worked on the legislations and the guidelines, and the government actually allowed them to do that. So I'll come to the bottlenecks which you face on day-to-day basis. But one big story which is moving now is that we were a country of gig economy, as he said, and we are not creating values. Like if you buy this iPhone, 60% of its revenue actually goes for the intellectual properties. It goes back to them. Even if it is manufactured in India, only 40% stays there, which almost is 90% of the cost of the local guy here. So I'm just trying to tell you that the manufacturing is, whether it's drone, hydrogen, or chips, which have been announced yesterday. I am more interested about those startups and entrepreneurs who are actually moving towards the IP regime. And that is where the real Moolaah would be actually tomorrow. So what are your thoughts about it?
So IP is something that even we are very gung-ho about, from the perspective that we are working in a domain which is content rich and content heavy. So the content IP that we are producing and the storytellers that are producing that IP, that's something that we are very proud of. For example, so we have a storyteller duo from Nagpur. It's called the Orange Odyssey. So what they do is they do a lot of heritage walks across Nagpur, and they talk about the different places and different cultural aspects of Nagpur. Now they've created that amazing, let's say, content IP. And what we are enabling them is to kind of monetize on that content IP that they have done. If there's somebody who's sitting, let's say in US, who's from Nagpur, that person would love to consume content.
So I'll hold your thought here. I'll tell you, because I'm giving advice to you as a lawyer now. So what happened that we work with a lot of music companies. And I'm not taking the names, but till 1960s and 70s, when movies were made, they were sold in a combined form. The movie बेच दी हमने. Now the situation is the Lyricist Association charges its own money. The people who compose the music, they charge their own intellectual property rights on the copyrights. And now it is all very dissected that the music rights will be sold to X, this will be sold to Y. It's like the BCCI, the digital rights are sold to this guy. So this is moving already. There is a settled domain now. That's why I'm asking, because you have such a countrywide readership now, and you're talking about millions of people using your data. Your robustness of your IP regime will also come how much IP registrations you're going to do.
I completely understood. And that's why every storyteller that we onboard, we're very clear as to what kind of rights we have versus what kind of rights they have versus how those rights can be used, let's say 10 years later. Because the stories that we tell, they are not ephemeral in nature. As in it's not a story that disappears tomorrow. Because culture is going to stay for the next 100 years, whether we stay or not.
Absolutely.
So, IP rights, and we have a very good legal.
So so this is a very interesting thing. So I'm taking more time on this. So there was a song which was into which was being became a bestseller. I'm not taking the name of the singer, but the original was from Bengal, which was part of the local folklore. And then finally they realized that they had no copyright, they had nothing, even if it was being sung for almost 200 years. So nothing happened. I'm just telling because the court litigation, I had observed that. So it all depends, not only prior use, also that you register it.
Just to add on to the point that you mentioned. So it's like, just I'm from Odisha and I'm from Konark in Odisha. There are so many stories which are around that. Now, somebody else goes ahead and then tells that story, writes a book on it. The book becomes a bestseller and they earn a lot of money. कहानी तो मेरी है ना,
Correct.
पैसा कोई और कमा रहा है.
Jay.
But on our platform, कहानी मेरी, I have the opportunity to tell the story and then earn out of it as well.
Also, you have a better documentation because the day you upload and everything, it's all documented now. There is a very good pattern. I understood you. Rujul, tell me one thing. Being an entrepreneur, there'll be a lot of days when it will be tough days for you. And you talked about it. How do you juggle between a tough day and what are the multiple roles you play on a given day?
Juggling on between a tough day and a good day, I think it's definitely the team, right? So being with the team and solving the problems with the larger team is what really, really helps. But also just going back, so we have a community on the app where we have more than 120,000 women who come to the app to learn more about the finances. And so on a bad day, seeing their comments, seeing how they are actually learning on the platform really, really helps because that's what we're trying to do at the end of the day, right? So I think just going back to the success stories definitely helps on a bad day. I'm sorry. What was it? What was the second question?
No, the second question is that how do you juggle? So what is your routine like on a given day? As a promoter, how hands-on you are on a smaller stuff as well?
Yeah, so I actually lead product and I work with two co-founders. So definitely, I mean, we are a product-focused company. So I work with product designers, I work with our engineers, with our lead of engineering, I work with our co-founders on strategy on a daily basis. So it's a lot of different things as long as the product is moving towards the company's vision.
Brilliant. Prakhar, tell us that what are the challenges you face as a first generation entrepreneur and how's your normal day looks like?
So I think the first part of the question, I think the biggest challenge which I think all of us are facing right now is talent. Talent is there, sourcing is unbelievable. So you getting that kind of right talent is fairly difficult as of now. And though things have shaped better in the last 6 months, finding the right co-founder is extremely important. I've been fortunate enough to have a very good team. I've been fortunate enough to have a very good senior management team also who has been able to handhold pieces. So I don't need to get actively involved in operations. Having said that, the normal day, I think most of the entrepreneurs here would agree to this, that we don't look at time. So if something has to be delivered, it has to be delivered. We don't look at time anymore. And that's the thing about this generation, which I feel that we are more result oriented. We believe that I think we don't believe in balance of life at all. We genuinely believe that if we have locked our goals and we need to look at that right now, maybe achieve them even before that. So the concept of time management is not there anymore, which probably is a hard taskmaster for us. But having said that, on an average basis, you would look at most of us growing our business towards the other side and getting the right resources in for active management on a daily basis.
Yeah, but on time management, let me tell you that I'm 50, but I know somebody who is no more, Ram Jethmalani. We were briefing him on a big matter. He was in late 80s at that time, 87 or 88. So I just asked him that what is the work-life balance? He said, work harder, balance will find its place. Correct. So it's across the generations. It's across the generation. Like I reached the first in my office, and why I asked that question to Rujul, and I'm making it very informal so that it's more engaging for them, that as a first generation lawyer who owns a firm, which is one of the top 30 firms in the country today, I see myself and my partners writing from HR or finance themselves with IDs. We don't want to waste money because we are not conditioned to keep a large army of people in finance and HR because we always did like this. And still we don't feel a need of it. Even if we have 40 people working with us, even now we have managed to keep our cost low. We are also a business only beyond a point. Of course, I go in court, so we do corporate transactions. But what I'm trying to tell you that my own belief is it's not generational. It is about person to person, and the talent crunch is a real big issue. So with how much difficult it is to get good talent and retain them, and what is your retention mantra?
So answering the first question, getting good talent is very difficult in the market right now. It's one of the biggest pain points that I think every business is facing
Every-
right now.
everywhere the same.
every business is facing that entire talent crunch. Uh,
You think because let me tell you, when I come to my office, my first feeling is that when I see mails that who has resigned. Because that is, or if somebody says, I want to meet you separately for 10 minutes, like today it happened when I was coming here. I said, but can you tell me over phone? No, I want to meet you separately. I understand that person has got an offer. These are the two good signals I've learned in 20 years now. Okay. Now I want to ask you, it's a very disturbing thing I'm asking you. Whatever gaga we do about our country, the fact is, on trust factor, we are one of the top from the bottom. After 150, our ranking is start. Do you think it's one of the reasons? Because we just generally don't trust anybody. Our businesses, when it happens within the family also, it breaks because of variety of factors, because there is so much of trust deficit in us, which leads to all of this.
I agree. I agree on the trust fact, wherein if there is no trust within the team or within within co-founders or within even let's say two people just working on a particular project, then that project actually just grow. What we've tried to do internally is, and this is a very generic statement that everybody's going to say, but we have tried to give responsibility to everybody across teams and individual responsibility, so that in the end, it's not that they're doing it for a 9 to 5 kind of a thing and then salary will be and cushion. It's mostly because they have that responsibility, they have that sole ownership of the product or the feature that they're doing. So usme they end up having more personal connect to the thing that they're working on. So that helps in retaining talent a lot.
Very well.
And it's a very generic statement, by the way. Everybody tries to do it. We have just tried to make sure that we give that trust, we show that trust, and we make sure that people have that. We are open to listening and we are open to criticism. I mean, there is a member in our team who was very sharp from the perspective that she would come and then if there's something that me and my co-founder Chetan we're doing wrong, very straightforward, galat kar.
Correct.
And we've always tried to be the kind of people who listen to other galat kar rahe honge. Koi bata raha hai galat kar rahe to sun lete hain. And just having that kind of an open culture, something that helps.
Great. Tell me, Rujul, what are the 3 factors in 2022 where you feel that India has no competition for running a business, which we bring on table, and what are the 3 things which completely repulses you?
That's a tough
Sorry.
question. So I think one of the major things definitely where India has no competition is with talent. I think hiring good talent is a huge challenge, but sorry, I think there's really good talent out there. There's skill, and there's so many learning opportunities that you can find good talent here that you can't elsewhere. I think that also the speed at which our economy is also growing is definitely something that a lot of other economies cannot match. And I think overall the trust factor that you mentioned, right? So I think that trust factor also has a good side to it where we're able to trust each other, not just within businesses, but within teams as well. India sort of works on relationships. So that's something that I'd say.
Okay, Prakhar, in my own team, I have partners who are with me for more than a decade, and they're much younger to me, but I don't know what is the binding factor. Maybe what you said very well, Sumit, that they come and say whatever they want to say on my face, and I normally listen. Both of them are women, and they are very differently. I have a feeling, and I'm asking a very difficult question to you. In my own understanding, I feel women look for options lesser than men in today's India. If they find a good place, they invariably stay, and they are happy to be mentored or they are happy to contribute. On the contrary, men are more fragile there, and they keep on looking for options. The day they join, it happens. What is your experience?
So rightly so, I believe I completely agree to what you're saying. And there's a very big reason, and it depends on the kind of organization that there is as well.
Yeah.
So you generally see a pattern that women folks would like flexibility a bit more, and men would like a higher compensation any day. Now, compensation is something which possibly you'll go to another firm in 6 months, you'll get another offer. They'll keep on shuffling. So you'll see profiles where every 2-3 years someone's changing jobs. But eventually, if you look at a women folk, they'll possibly stick around more
Correct.
because you would have given them that flexibility
Right.
of possibly you can do work from home 3 days a week.
Right.
You can probably tell them that it's completely fine if you're not coming today to office. You
Right.
can work from somewhere else. You have one meeting, don't come over here. So that flexibility comes to women folk. And that has helped them in developing a trust. So,
Right.
like I think in the previous panel, someone had mentioned loyalty, and that loyalty factor comes in very, very strongly within the employees because you will never be able to hold them with ESOPs because
Right.
eventually it's paper money to them, which will be flushed down the toilet. The second piece is, of course, you can't hold them with compensation also. So either, and you also know that everyone's
You
focusing.
think after today's report on one particular educational company, they will really care about ESOPs?
I'm 100% sure they would. But eventually, then the thought process then comes in is that what will actually hold them when you know that the economy is also
Yes.
going towards gig economy and everyone wants to become an entrepreneur. Then eventually, it's all about how much that person trusts in you and your vision. If your vision is spot on and he wants to help you reach there, and he is embedded towards what you want, that's when that will work genuinely, and that's what we've seen in our team. I think we are blessed, and I
Very
hope I
good.
continue to
You're
be
very
blessed.
lucky. So with post-pandemic, these businesses we are talking about, post-pandemic, you think people's priority has really changed so far as life is concerned, and work is just a part of life.
So pandemic was different for different people. There was a certain element to it that all of us resonated with, but there was a lot of realization that happened. We started our business in the midst of, so we started Ekank in the midst of pandemic. And it was a realization that Chetan and I had, that we want to do something new. We want to do something around culture. So the priorities have changed. People want to live their lives more, which is fair, which is completely fair. Because we don't know next pandemic kab aayega. बचेंगे या नहीं बचेंगे ये भी नहीं पता. So it's so yesterday there was somebody in my gym who was just randomly चिल्ला रहा था कि जिंदगी एक है, जी लेते हैं, पता नहीं दोबारा होगा या नहीं होगा, अगले का पता नहीं, पिछले का पता नहीं. So I think that is something that is very true. Pandemic has made people realize that, and it's completely fair. For us, we give that complete freedom to everybody who's part of the team.
Yeah.
If they want to take some time off, go roam around, that's perfectly fine.
Yes.
क्योंकि काम तो कर ही रहे हैं ना.
I agree with you because for me personally, when the pandemic came, we are also in a kind of business where the courts are closed, then we earn no money. We have to go to courts to earn money. So everything was shut for almost 4 or 5 months. And I'm just trying to give you this confidence from my age perspective that if in 2020 in September somebody would have told me that we'll survive and thrive, I would not have believed it. Knowing that this pandemic is for real, it will go on for it is the longest standing pandemic in the history of human history. Now they are saying. I work for a lot of hospitals. In the first wave, second wave, we created an oxygen bench, and the kind of stories which has happened, even doctors were not getting beds. That was the situation because you can't remove people from the operation theaters. You can't remove them from ICU till they either saved or they die. So it has changed the entire perspective. But if you ask from business perspective, of course, we are in much better position. Most of the companies, most of the people will say that we have learned so much, and actually financially it has not been that big a disaster for most of them, except for few industries. I will ask you, Rujul, that and we are left with
To add to the point,
yeah.
I think pandemic taught us to persevere.
That is what it took you to.
Yeah.
It also made you more accountable to yourself, which was not the case earlier. I'll just tell you one interesting data. I was searching for few cars for those people who have worked with me for 1.5 to 2 years. New cars are not coming because the chips are not available. So if and I'm not taking anything away from Tata or Mahindra, but even their cars are now under waiting for more than 1 year. 5 years back, अगर आप किसी को बोलते कि टाटा महिंद्रा की गाड़ी 1 साल बाद मिलेगी, तो कोई believe नहीं करता. So situation has completely changed. You try and go and find out a second-hand car, you won't find it. So why? Because people have become so careful about themselves. They want to rather go in a second-hand, third-hand car, or to travel in any mobility which is shared mobility. So all this is going upside down now. Rujul, what are your these in last 2 years, how you have been tested, and why did you decided to come back here and taste water in India? Why did you decided to come back from a very good American degree and start working on your own dream project here?
Yeah, I think the last 2 years, specifically during the pandemic, were definitely difficult, right? And like Sumit said, we had good things as well, where I was able to come back, spend time with my family. Hadn't done that in like more than 10 years. I think that was really good, but we also saw a lot of demise and sadness around grief. But I think for the team specifically, it definitely taught us that we can work remotely, that people can work as productively as possible in within their homes as well, and get that balance somehow where they're able to spend more time with their families as well. They don't necessarily have to move to Bangalore where we were initially. And I think for me, I decided to move back from the US. I was working there after college, and I did have this problem that I wanted to solve, which was more relevant in India than it was in the US. And at that point in time, for me, I did want that flexibility where I could experiment for some time, where I could easily quit. I was on a work visa there. And so you don't have that flexibility there. So on your H-1Bs. And so for me, that flexibility was really, really important, and decided to give it a chance here for some time.
Very good. Prakhar, you worked ever, or you straight away started your own business?
No, I was definitely working for possibly 3 to 4 years prior
Right.
to starting this venture, and been with multinational firms. Was with DBS, was with Prudential, so had my share of corporate experience, to be honest.
So how did you deal with the pandemic? And the business was pre-pandemic. So how did you really develop in the pandemic?
No, so actually, Moolaah is a byproduct of having dealt with the pandemic.
Yes.
Because being honest, I think with the pandemic, we understood that we are not tech enabled, we are tech dependent now. So we know each and every industry which has gone through. I think we just did a session on how tech has evolved and how it's shaping up each and every industry, which was fairly informative because if you look at it, it's completely, if you want to scale towards the existing brands which are doing fairly well, like someone like in our industry, someone like a Kotak, who's
Correct.
in the last 20 years grown up the ladder. If you want to beat them, you can't expect that you can hire talent and do things about
Right.
it. You eventually have to scale your business via technology, and
Right.
that's a bare minimum now. So eventually that realization comes in only when you're pushed to a corner.
Right.
And we were pushed to a corner, and just like you, we've also thrived on that aspect.
Yeah.
And that's given us some tremendous learnings that we have not now shifted just from not only being a fintech venture to a fintech powerhouse, where we now have 3 to 4 ventures across.
Wow.
So that's helped us quite a bit, to be honest.
So, Sumit, my pandemic story is that I started podcast, and it became quite a popular. So I did 4 editions. I in fact took training for it from leading radio jockeys, and Rahul Bankin and all these people trained me professionally, and it was quite a good experience. But that was the first. I would say the first year of pandemic. The second year of the pandemic, I launched a show which I do with Business World, which is called the Sudhir Mishra Show. So from Paridhi Adani to Abhishek Singhvi, they all have come on my show. I could never imagine 4 years back if somebody would have said to me that I will be doing shows or I'll be doing a podcast. Ka matlab bhi nahi pata tha. Zoom ka matlab bhi nahi pata tha. And I wrote articles which had nothing to do with law. So I wrote about Mirza Ghalib in Hindustan Times. I reviewed Veer Sanghvi's book, The Rude Life, for Hindustan Times, where he was the editor-in-chief. It all happened because there was nothing to do. There was nothing to go. So tell us that which are the countries who you think, especially Pakistan, I'll be clear, because they have the same kind of stories. How much of your platform is now international? How much is within the country?
So a majority of the entire platform is India oriented, because India from a culture stand so big, so diverse, that trying to capture India as a whole market would take us years. But we have a lot of readers from US. So we see around 200 to 250,000 monthly active users from US, which is a small fraction of the overall number that we see. But yes, those users are loyal. They love coming onto the platform, reading stories about culture which they belong to, or culture that just something new, because there's a lot of nostalgia once you go outside, right? Once you go outside, once you're not in India anymore, I think culture ki value tab pata chalti hai. India mein to,
So you would be getting very amazing data also now. Who is reading?
So we don't capture a lot of user information, but what we
But-
understand is patterns, user patterns.
Right.
What kind of users are coming onto the platform?
Hmm.
Are there people who want to travel? So they would love to know more about the stories of a particular place before they want to travel.
Correct.
There could be people trying to make a decision कि किस type का carpet चाहिए. तो वो carpet लेने से पहले they would know more about, let's say, different handicrafts or different art forms. किसी को painting खरीदनी है तो बनी ठनी के बारे में पढ़ लेंगे या फिर मधुबनी के बारे में देख लेंगे, कुछ और देख लेंगे. So those are the kind of data those are some of the data points that we capture. But all in all, yes, it's a non-fiction platform. Non-fiction platform has its own benefits, has its own set of wonderful data that can be later.
But still, which are the countries which really you think nearby countries or?
So the entire Southeast Asian market.
So they are reading.
Yeah. So entire Southeast Asian market is something that we are going to expand into.
Right.
Because the cultures are very similar.
Right.
And psyche is also very similar.
Correct.
Sab grow kar rahe hain. Everybody wants to stay rooted to their culture. So that's one of the things that we want to do. And Europe as well. Europe has जो भी बोलना है बोल सकते हैं, बट काफी कल्चर तो है वहाँ पे. जैसे बोलना चाहे बोल सकते हैं, बट काफी कल्चर तो है वहाँ.
You're so right. You're so right. So whenever we think of Rujul traveling, I end up, after making a lot of elaborate plans, I end up going to London, where I'm a door tenant. So I have a chambers. I have to practice 1 month in a year, and just leaving for some small countries within the Europe. Because Europe has so much of culture. You cannot find it anywhere else.
So culture has been preserved as well.
Yeah.
काफी preserved है वहाँ पे.
Preserve किया.
So globalization hasn't hit. मतलब अपने तरीके से hit किया, but ऐसा नहीं है कि building तोड़ दी.
Correct.
So वो सब है. So it's a good place to travel.
Great. Rujul, tell me, which are the countries you have in mind? Bangladesh, because they have a lot of things happening on this space where you're working.
Yeah, I think definitely South Asia, right? So Southeast Asian market is definitely on our list. Even Latin America, for that matter, very similar culture for women there. And so we see more emerging markets as our next step, for sure, for basis.
Wonderful. And what will be your goal for next 24 months?
For the next 24 months, definitely focusing on India. So we're currently, we just launched our card with rewards created for women that would also give you access to credit in some time coming soon. So getting to that full stack of financial services, right from insurance to credit loans is our goal for the next 24 months.
Great. Prakhar, your final thoughts. What are your thoughts? Where you see your business in 2024? And what are the new dimensions you will attach to it, and which countries you are looking at for expansion?
So from a country perspective, being very honest, it was surprising for me also to know that Middle East is fairly behind in terms of tech, and possibly 5-6 years behind India in terms of the kind of ventures which are supported. I think in October 2nd week, they're having a fairly large conference called STEP also there, where of course we'll also be a part. But having said that, Middle East, possibly Southeast Asia, but only looking at markets like Indonesia, Vietnam, or which are fairly mature. But having said that, they're not up and above the curve. And then of course, Africa as well. Those are markets which we would want to support ourselves in and get outside partners also who can be in those countries, and in those jurisdictions you have different licensing requirements. So, and there is a big underlying of us being governed by SEBI. So you know more, so I won't comment much about it. And I would personally say the goals are right now to look at possibly 3 million users in any case by the year end. And we are looking at making sure we can expand our base across advisors over and above what there are already. So there are only possibly around 250,000 advisors in India, which is negligible to the kind of audience we have. We are roughly around a $75 billion wealth market. So we are focusing on wealth. And then of course, we're focusing on other products, like we're getting into spending. We're focusing on new banking. We've seen what has happened with BNPL products. So we don't want to focus on that as of now.
Very well. So we are just at the end of the program. I'll just ask all three of you one final thought. Sumit, how much is your own funding and how much bootstrapped you are and how much you are taking from others?
So we raised a seed round this year. So 9 unicorns and Titan Capital. So we did $1 million round. So that's the paisa hai. The other thing is we're also revenue positive. So we do around $45,000 to $50,000 revenue every month. So yeah, that's
Very well. Rujul?
Yeah, we've raced across 2 rounds, and we're gearing up for our Series A this coming year as well. And yeah, we've been funded by global VCs, Indian VCs, super angels as well.
Super. Prakhar?
Yep. So we were in the first piece we were self-funded. We ourselves had put in money, both the co-founders, and after that we did a seed round, and that seed round was for around $1 million. We had very notable angels and a venture fund, and now of course we'll go for a pre-series A Jan onwards.
So I'll just tell you one final thought that working with lot many investment funds, including Quadria and Lightspeed, my own understanding is that everybody is saying we want to invest more in India, but they are not ready because they are still wait and watch mode. Maybe another 12 months will clear a lot many doubts. So many thanks to all three of you for this very good discussion and conversation we had. Thank you.